Hey guys, what's up? It's Will here once again for another fight card prediction. We're here for UFC Vegas 85, I think we were. Dolidze against Imavov, another middleweight main event here. Getting this out a little bit early for you. I've had some people that have messaged me and saying how far along were you with some fights, and I was like, there's some fights I definitely don't want to check out in this card, but there is definitely fights that I do like in this card, and I think it's a fairly solid Apex card, but I just think the UFC need to get out and about and away from this Apex, but that's for a whole other kind of a whole other thing, really. So, coming off UFC 297, I bet Sean Strickland, and I knew I probably should have stayed away in that one. And there was a couple other decisions that maybe never went my way. I thought the Armfield one was super close, so I could see why they gave it to him. I was on Katona in that, and then I was completely wrong about Charles Jourdain. He kind of really got bossed by Sean Woodson. So, but like I say, that was previous event. Looking to really get myself started coming in here into February after a kind of slow kind of month for MMA. Especially on the UFC side for January, and moving into some big events with the pay-per-views and so on here. So overall, solid card. If you can like and subscribe, guys, before we get started, that would help so much. And if you got any questions or anything throughout, I'll jump back into the comment section at the end, and I'll answer anything if you've got anything there or your opinions. I want to hear those as well. So starting off, heavyweight division, we've got Thomas Petersen, 8-1 record against Jamal Pogues, 10-4. And the betting lines for these ones, there's a plus 150 on Jamal Pogue to a minus 175 on Thomas Petersen. Never really wanted to watch too much in this. I watched the Parkin fight because I actually think Mick Parkin could be a fairly decent prospect in the heavyweight division. But Pogues, I don't see him having a long UFC career, honestly. I think that he doesn't really stand out to me in too many facets of the game, where you look at Thomas Petersen, you see he's got some power, he's got some really, really solid ground and pound. But this is one of these fights, this is like one of these fights I'm like, this is a UFC fight in 2024, and it's like, these are guys that I know it's heavyweight, and heavyweight sometimes has some really bad guys. We've had that throughout the years within the UFC, but Thomas Petersen, I think, could move into being at least a semi-respectable UFC heavyweight, with his only loss in his record is to Waldo Acosta, who's probably virgin and moving into the top 15 of the rankings there. So yeah, I'm not going to have my money in this fight whatsoever. I'm not going to really look too much into this one. There's other fights I'd rather spend my time on. So I'm going to pick Thomas Petersen to win that bout there. Moving on, this is a really good fight, a really interesting fight in the lightweight division. We've got Marquel Mederos against Landon Quinones. Mederos with an 8-1 record, Quinones 7-2-1. With the betting lines plus 150 on the Quinones side, and there's a minus 175, I believe, on the Marquel Mederos side. They're coming into this one, like I say, I'm not one that watches Dana White Contender Series all too much. So I didn't really know much about Mederos until I really went into kind of looking into his record. And then I watched some fights this afternoon, and there were some things I liked about him. I think he's fairly decent. Like, I liked his finish over his Dana White Contender Series opponent there against Isakhov, where Isakhov, he really came out there and was landing some shots initially earlier on in that fight, and really winging someone's to the body, to the head. And then he kind of got grappled a little bit up against the cage where Isakhov was looking to get takedowns, and he showed some pretty good takedown defense. And then once he got his opportunity to get his back or his shoulder off the cage, turned Isakhov around, pushed him against the cage, and really started to go to work with some lovely strikes and some lovely combinations. And he was going from the body to the head and really hurting this guy. And then Isakhov decided to throw his head in there and caught a knee on the come up there, and really got taken out there in the first round. Watched some of these other fights, watched the Lamperez fight, and that guy, he got hit with one shot and wanted out of there ASAP. And the Murphy fight was a good kind of barometer, 15 hard minutes in there. And yeah, he looks fairly decent. Comes from a really good camped there at Factory X, so you would think that his gas tank would really check out, would really like might be a weapon as it moves into that second, third round. And he trains with some legit guys out there at Factory X. You seen that Contender Series fight there. When he won the fight, there was Jonathan Martinez, there was Yusuf Zalal, there was Chris Gutierrez. So he's working himself with really good, solid guys. I think Mark Montoya is the head coach there as well. He's as solid a coach as there is in the business. So, but I think he's got a really solid opponent here in Landon Quinones. I think this was, when I looked at this one, I wasn't super interested, but then I watched some of Quinones, and the first fight I watched, let me bring this up, sorry, I wrote some notes on that. The first fight I watched was the Udawale fight, and I thought he started off pretty slow. He really wasn't throwing a lot of his shots with big power, and really just picking some of his shots as his opponent was against the cage. But eventually he started to work into that fight, kind of right through the first round into the second, and then really when he started to throw some more pep on his shots, really started to hit Udawale there, and then took him out with a nice finish. Before that, I watched I don't know why I watched the Udawale fight first, and then watched Acevedo. Acevedo looked fairly old, if I'm not mistaken there, and he was really winging punches, and he looked like he gassed out pretty hard. But apart from all that, I thought he gave a really good account of himself against a legit guy in Nasrat Hakparas last time out. I think I was down in Australia, if I'm not too mistaken. And he came out there and he was landing some big shots. He was trying to keep up with the pace of Nasrat Hakparas. Tried to attempt to get himself into that fight, but Nasrat was a tough entry fight into the UFC because he's also a solid striker, very fluent, can fight off both sides. And I thought he really, like I say, he did give a really good account of himself and was throwing leg kicks. And he was really keeping himself in the fight. This is an interesting fight for me here. And I think that although he gave a decent account of himself against Hakparas, to me, it was pretty clear 30-27. But like I say, for an entry fight, I don't think he's got anything to really be disappointed in there. He gave it his all, and he's seen what the UFC level is all about. But this is a step down against Mederos here. When I watch a little bit of Quinones, he likes to kind of try and get some of these takedowns, and once he's there, he can be a little bit heavy on top. But this is where I think that he has to. I think this is where he has to probably get some of this fight and make it dirty. Get this guy up against the cage, look for takedowns, and like I say, what we've seen from Mederos, that he can stop a takedown, stuff a takedown, and then once it's an open space, he can land his shots. I think this is a very, very competitive fight, and I see this more for me as probably dog or pass. So I'm going to lean with Landon Quinones to win a very close decision, but I can also see if this fight goes on, Mederos maybe starts to pick him apart if Quinones kind of fades a little bit. Now, Quinones comes out of a fairly decent camp there down in Florida at Killcliff, so he will have good looks down there. And like I say, he has a southpaw as well. I'm just going to take a shot in the dog there, and I think I might make him my dog of the week. I've hit my first two dogs of the week for the first two UFC events. Stupidly never bet Roman Tavares last time out, even though I thought he kind of lost that fight. But I might make him my dog of the week in this one here. Luana Carolina against Julija Stoliarenko is up next. 11-7-1 for Stoliarenko, 9-4 for Luana Carolina, with the odds -125 for Stoliarenko and +100 for Carolina. This is an interesting fight for the simple reason that we know what Julija's going to do. She's want to jump in there, try and get takedowns, judo throws, and get that jiu-jitsu going in her. Because once she does that, she can be an absolute destroyer down there. But it's really all she has, because her striking is pretty non-existent. I don't think she's got the, like I say, I don't think she's going to have a great gas tank to really go into those late rounds. We have seen when she's went into those late rounds, she can be stopped there. Julia Avila got her there. Alexis Davis, that was a pretty competitive fight, not a great fight. I watched that one back and thinking, I should have did something else with my time. But if you give this girl an opportunity to get this fight to the mat, she will find something. And we've seen that if you go back to Jessica Rose Clark, and you've got Molly McCann last time. And that was just such a bad fight IQ to really engage in any kind of grappling in that fight. And Carolina, if you look at her fights, I went back and watched a few of her fights. She gets taken down multiple times by like not good wrestlers and grapplers. Jojo Calderwood, Petrovic, I don't think it's overly a great grappler. Molly McCann got her down a couple of times, as well as taking that absolute hellacious spinning back elbow. And like I say, you can go back to Botelho. Godinez obviously got her down. So she's there to be taken down, but she has kind of worked in it a little bit throughout her career a little bit, and I thought it was making improvements. But when you see like Jojo getting her down, to me, I just think that Julija is probably going to get an opportunity here to grab a limb and take it home with her. But it'll be interesting to see if this gets through the 7-minute mark of this fight. I think Carolina becomes very live because she has got a fairly decent high output. We've seen that she can land at a clip. We've seen that in the Priscilla fight. Now, I know Priscilla is a bit of a kind of... she's someone that you can hit very, very easily. In the Jojo fight, Jojo is not the most defensively enabled fighter there. She can get hit quite a bit. I think Stoliarenko catches her with something at some point here, or gets a takedown, and gets her down to the ground and gets a submission win. But like I say, never really want to be putting any money in kind of fights like that. If you can, I think the spot last week with Jillian Robertson via TKO was a great spot for many people that hit that out there. Next up, we've got Blake Bilder against Jeong Lee, I should say. 8-1-1 for Bilder, 10-1 for Lee, and this is in the featherweight division. With the odds on this fight, just looking at it here, -125 for Jeong Lee, +125 for Blake Bilder. If you go back and watch the Blake Bilder when he first made his way into the UFC, I've just not been super impressed. I thought there was things that I did kind of like a little bit, but there was things like he would sit back a little bit too much. He could be losing fights, and then he finds a submission or he finds a knockout. You watch the Buafente fight and Alex Morgan fight. He in those rounds and fights, he was kind of down a little bit, but would come into the fight. The Carvalho fight was another one where he was down, but he had a really good entrance into the UFC. I think I bet him some underdog in Shane Young there. Shane Young was kind of on his way out, and then he really got blasted as a kind of bigger favourite. That kind of recency bias against Kyle Nelson and lost last time out. Now Jeong Lee, it's hard to say, Jeong Lee. I quite like him in this fight. He is going to be my pick. Obviously, this is his big kind of UFC debut, kind of out here in America, getting out of Asia, where he's obviously from Korea, whatever. So, but he's coming off a win, 22-3 over Yeza, where he won a fairly kind of close split decision. But there's some things I like with him. I think he's got some power. I think that he can mix it up a little bit. But I see this being another competitive fight. Blake Bilder, to me, I think how he wins this fight, if he can land something kind of early on and really get the respect of Lee. But I'm going to take this Lee via decision. It's not one of, like I say, Blake Bilder, I think he's got a lot of things that you could like. But for me, I'm on the Lee side when I was watching him back. I think he's a little bit more... just think he can do a little bit more. I think he can kind of lead the dance and look good in the kind of judges' eyes. But whether it's a fight I want to put any money on, I don't know. It's not really a fight that really caught my eye once I looked at this card here. But I'll take Lee for the win in that one there. Moving on, Themba Gorimbo against Pete Rodriguez. Gorimbo 11-4 record, Rodriguez 5-1, and -225 for Themba Gorimbo, +225 for Pete Rodriguez. this to me is a kind of complete dog or pass if you're betting this one. I wouldn't be betting Gorimbo odds at minus 225. I would be more tempted to take a poke on Pete Rodriguez. Now, he's got a lot to overcome in this one, coming in short notice. This is supposed to be Kiefer Crosby that was coming in here. Smaller guy. I think he's like a 7 or 8 inch reach disparity. So he is kind of coming in against the grain a little bit. And there's been a lot of kind of media attention on Gorimbo because The Rock bought my house, Dwayne Johnson bought my house. But let's not get it twisted. He is not a super solid UFC caliber fighter, in my opinion. Both guys. But he has got some things you must like at this division. Big reach. And he is coming off that win over Takashi Sato, where he looked a lot better than he did in his UFC debut when he fought, his name is AJ Fletcher, where he got subbed in the second round there, really put himself in some kind of bad positions, and then inevitably got the little guy kind of caught him in a choke. But in the next fight, got takedowns. You've seen that he's got some fairly heavy ground and pound, but I think that his chin can be cracked. You watch some of his fights before he came to the UFC and over there in the AFC, not the greatest caliber fighters come out there and saying that Dricus du Plessis is now a UFC middleweight champion, but he is a kind of outlier, I think, for South Africa in general. So I think Pete Rodriguez could be live in this fight for the reason that he's going to come out here and bang. He has got a UFC win, you could say, against Mike Jackson. It's hard to really kind of give him props for that, because Mike Jackson should never have been anywhere near the UFC from the get-go. First round knockout, though, caught him with that knee, put him down. And before that, he lost to Jack Della Maddalena. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he comes out here and catches this guy with a shot and puts him down, hurts him. But I don't know how good his gas tank, is going to be, kind of going into the late part of this fight, being on short notice. I do like the fact that he comes forward and he's willing to kind of go for it. I just don't think he's very. I don't think either of these guys are super skilled. It's whether I want to make the pick here on. I am very tempted with Pete Rodriguez, which is scary. I'll not have my money anywhere near it, but I'm going to go Gorimbo. I think that he's going to have some opportunities to tie this guy up, maybe get a takedown, and maybe hurt him with some ground and pound. But if I had to make a bet and someone was giving me money to just make a bet in this fight, it would be in the dog, but not super confident. And I'm not super confident in the pick, honestly. So I'll go Gorimbo, but like I say, I'm not confident in that one whatsoever. Charles Johnson against Azat Maksum is next up in the flyweight division. 13-6 record for Charles Johnson. A shiny 17-0 record for Azat Maksum, who's a guy that I've known about for a long time. I thought he should have been in the UFC a little bit while ago. The odds in this one, plus 163 for Charles Johnson, minus 188, best available for Azat Maksum. And I think Maksum, in my opinion, he didn't really have a great... I didn't think he had a great debut in the UFC. I thought he was better than what he showed against Tyson Nam. Now, in saying that, Tyson Nam is a glorified veteran who's very tough, hits hard, and is hard to look good against. So he needed to get the takedowns in those fights to probably get in the win column in that one, because he was getting outstruck at the hands of Nam. He was getting hit with some decent shots, but once he got the takedowns, he showed that that's where his ground game is very, very lethal. And he can control down there. He can land shots. He can do enough. And like I said, I've known about this guy for a couple of years. There's a lot of flyweights out there that the UFC could bring in to really boost this division. He was one of them. Asu Almabayev was another one. There's plenty more out there. There's they could come into the UFC, but he's beat some fairly decent guys out in the regional. Nothing to really write home about. But I mean, you've got that confidence of being 17-0. He's getting matched up here against the guy I think he can take down. If Charles Johnson could just stuff some takedowns and not be on his back end in a fight, he keeps himself relevant in fights and can win rounds and can go hard into that late second and third. But once he's down on his back, he's a little bit too easy to kind of keep there. And I think Maksum is going to get takedowns, and I think he's going to win rounds through that. But did I say this fight was minus 188? Yeah, I thought his line was higher than that. I don't know why I thought that was. I thought it was like minus 275. But I quite like him at these odds at minus 188. I just don't know whether I want to really have my money down on it. Even though I think he could win pretty comprehensively, 30-27 through his takedowns. But yeah, I think I'm pretty confident in Azat Maksum to win this fight here. Moving on to the women's flyweight division, we've got Molly McCann against Diana Belbita. Is this not strawweight? I believe this is strawweight. Let me just check this. Because I thought Molly McCann was dropping weight. Women's strawweight. So she's dropping to 115. This is a rematch of a couple of years ago. Oh, interesting to see Molly McCann at this weight. Like I say, this is a matchup that was had a few years ago, and Molly McCann came out the victor there. Where in that fight she got the takedowns in that one and just landed a clear amount of strikes. You can see she had a strength advantage, but that's more on the Belbita side. She doesn't really take a back step too much. She comes forward, can land at a heavy pace, like lots of strikes, but is very susceptible to getting takedowns against it. And we've seen that in numerous fights. But she showed in her last fight she can mix up a little bit. She got some takedowns. She's, like I say, her defining factor is she's not a great striker, but she has a high, heavy output. You look at her last 4 fights in the UFC, Hannah Goldie, 117, Gloria DePala, 87, 106 against Maria Oliveira, 100 significant strikes against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. So she's got some output in there. I'm interested. This is one to look out for the simple reason that Molly's making the drop down to 115. I think that is going to be a major, major struggle for her. I think if she makes the weight, will that deplete her as the fight goes on, which might make Belbita, if she doesn't get the takedowns, I think Belbita will come into that fight late on and will land an abundance of strikes. And it wouldn't surprise me if she was to take out someone like Molly McCann. But I think that takedowns will be there for Molly. I think initially the strength will be there early on, but she could kind of fade as that fight goes on. So I think as a pick, it's going to be Molly McCann. I should have mentioned the odds here. Molly McCann, minus 225. And I see a plus 188, plus 200 on Diana Belbita there. So Molly McCann, I think, is going to be the pick there. But yeah, wouldn't surprise me if I seen Belbita get the win here and move herself to 1-1 against Molly McCann, in my opinion. But I think Molly just does enough in that fight there. In the welterweight division, we've got Gilbert Urbina against Charles Radtke. Urbina coming in here with a 7-2 record against the 8-3 record of Charles Radtke. Where is the odds for this bad boy? So minus 170 for Gilbert Urbina with plus 175 on the Radtke side. This was one that was brought to me by a really sharp guy out there who's a very good bet and has been for a very long time. And it wasn't one that really was initially on my kind of radar. It was one of the kind of lower down ones. I was looking at other fights ahead of this one. And then once I kind of walked into this one and looked into it a little bit, I was like, yeah, I think he's kind of spot on. And maybe that odds of minus 170 could be inflated a little bit to, in my opinion, minus 225, minus 250. I think that he could really take over this fight here. And like I say, Urbina's coming off that win over Ryan Kosei. Kosei got hurt to the body initially, I think, in that first round, and then really was just trying to defend that body, get into the second, and realised that he was up against it and got caught with the front kick to the body. But you could see the pressure from Urbina in that fight, and I loved that. Firing low kicks, firing like body kicks, got the takedown, was very heavy, looking to land shots. He looks like he's got a heavy like pace with his gas tank, can go hard for 15 minutes. Don't think he's super high level, but I think that he's got more. I do think he has enough here against a Charles Radtke, who he's also coming off a win. I mean, you look at some of these wins that some of these guys are having in the UFC, Mike Mathetha, like Blood Diamond. I mean, that is not like a great look, honestly. It really isn't. But he comes from CFFC, had a couple of solid wins over there. Over Caleb Crump was 4-2, I think it was at that point. Raheem Forrest. And like I say, this was one that I think initially might start off a little bit close. But I think that Gilbert Urbina could start to cook this guy as the fight goes on. Bigger guy, 6'3", so that's a massive welterweight there. Like I say, Radtke, I think he just did enough against like Blood Diamond in that one. I don't think he's overly UFC caliber. I think Urbina can set a pace in this guy, tire him out, just do more and bludgeon him a little bit more. So Gilbert Urbina to me is going to probably be a bet. I'm probably going to have to look at that fairly soon. I like him to win this fight. I think that he gets it. I think he can take him out in that mid to late part of the fight, possibly into the third round there via knockout. So for me, I'm going to pick Gilbert Urbina for the win. Where are we at? Moving up to the middleweight division, we've got Aliaskhab Khizriev against Mahmoud Muradov. 14-0 record, another shiny 14 undefeated record there. 14-0 record with a 26-8 record of Muradov coming the other way. And we have a minus 188 to Khizriev with a plus 163 on Mahmoud Muradov. Really good fight. I completely forgot about Khizriev because he's been out for nearly 2 years, just shy. I think it's like 22 months. He's been out for a couple of years nearly, and he's had that injury. And he's, like I say, he's not a young guy. He's 34, but he is very tricky. When I went back, I was like, right, what's the kind of caliber of guys this guy's beaten? And I don't want to disrespect the guy because there is every guy that's in front of you is going to be pretty solid, but I think his best wins were the Sugimoto fight from way back in Contender Series. That's 2020. That's 3.5 years ago. Got that rear naked choke in the first round there, but then he's just had a glutton of cancelled fights. One fight in the UFC where he took out Dennis Tululian, who is known to fade and doesn't have a great ground game. But he is solid. You can see that he's got some legit striking, can knock you out with some big shots, and he can grapple a little bit as well. Where you look at Mahmoud Muradov, a guy I've liked in the UFC for many years. How long has this guy been in the UFC, actually? Interesting to find out. So coming on 5 years this year with some decent wins in his record. Trevor Smith, Alessio De Chirico, Andrew Sanchez, all guys not with the UFC anymore. And saying that with losses to Mia Short, Cowboy Halio, but coming off that win over Brian Bam Bam Barberena, very good striker, very, very kind of on the balls of his feet, looking to kind of catch at distance. This is going to be an interesting fight if this stays standing and moves into the later part of this fight here. I'm kind of tempted to go on the Muradov side here. I think that he's got a really fairly decent game where he can land numerous takedowns himself, can land some fairly decent strikes. He can if you look at that Sanchez fight, I think it was like 79 significant strikes. He really kind of kept Andrew Sanchez at bay there. Before that, he landed near to 100 strikes against Trevor Smith, also got takedowns there. I think that he can get takedowns here if the fight goes later on. I think he has to be careful very early. But I think that Muradov, what's the stats and the differences for these two fights here? I'm interested to see. So 6'2" with a 75-inch reach and 5'9" with a 74 on the Khizriev side, coming out the southpaw stance. So, like I say, I'm going to take a dog shot on Muradov here. I think that the layoff, the overall activity of Muradov, who can kind of do a little bit of everything, might kind of be enough to win this fight. So I'm going to take Mahmoud Muradov to win this encounter here. Where are we at? Sorry, my internet has been rather slow tonight. Viviane Araujo against Natalia Silva in the women's flyweight division. 12-5 record for Viviane Araujo. Natalia Silva 16-5-1, which is kind of interesting. She's got more fights, although being far younger than that. Viviane Araujo, probably one of the biggest dogs in the card, plus 300 with a minus 275 coming back on Natalia Silva. Yeah, there's not anything to dislike really what you're seeing with Natalia Silva in a UFC tenure. I think this is a tougher fight than what she's faced early on, but I think as this fight progresses, I think she's going to have far too much for her with her kicking game, with her striking. I thought Viviane, that was another spot last time out where I remember I bet Jennifer Maia against Casey O'Neill, and then she was the underdog against Jennifer Maia, and I was like, that's just wrong. You have to be in the Viviane Araujo side, and she showed that she's, when she puts it together, gets some takedowns and just some top time, that she could have won that fight, and she came out there and did. For me, Natalia Silva's just, I think she's running into a girl who's just full of confidence at the minute, 4-0 in UFC tenure, although I think that she hasn't fought a couple of the best girls. A win over Justavicius and Andrea Lee is not bad to have in your record, and she's shown that she can go toe-to-toe with some of those girls, also get takedowns, and she can knock girls out that aren't at the kind of UFC level, like you see with the Bleda, Leonardo. I think Araujo will fight tough, but she will ultimately end up losing the decision. So, yeah, Natalia Silva's going to be the pick there. I think she's a parlay piece. I think she's pretty safe if you're looking for parlay pieces. Whether I play, I'm like a parlay person myself. I might look in somewhere there, but I might not. Randy Brown against Muslim Salikov. Randy Brown with a 17-5 record. Muslim Salikov 19-4 with the odds in this one. Randy Brown minus 225 plus 200 on Muslim Salikov. So this fight, I believe, was meant to go down beforehand, and the fight got pulled. I think Randy Brown got ill and the fight got pulled. But this was one I remember. I think the line was pretty much the same as well, where Randy Brown was a guy that I quite liked it at the odds. I think it was like minus 200. But yeah, Muslim Salikov is like a veteran of the sport. Really good striker, good counter striker. Doesn't have the highest output, but can catch you with some big shots and hurt you with some of those shots. I just think he's against a guy here, a big dude, big, long, rangy guy who I think can match him to an extent on the feet, keep it distance, and get in and out before really getting caught with anything too hard over Muslim Salikov. Salikov, to me, I think is kind of in the downward trend of. I think he will be by the end of this year. I don't think he'll be in the UFC. Coming off that loss to Nicholas Dalby, where he got outstruck by Dalby, and like Dalby can keep up a pace, so that's the thing. And Dalby is one of those guys that he's just a dog, man. He really is. So yeah, for me, Randy Brown, I think that if he doesn't engage and kind of fight stupid here, I think he can mix in takedowns, use some of that jiu-jitsu that he's got, which he showed in the Alex Oliveira fight. Maybe get a submission. Might be something to look at, but I just think he does enough to win this fight here and kind of move himself on into a 2-fight win streak. So I'll take Randy Brown, but I'll probably not be betting any part of that fight, to be honest with you. Whole main event of the night, we've got Renato Moicano. Money Moicano is back against Drew Dober. Renato Moicano, 17-5-1 record with Drew Dober, 27-12. Two uber veterans of the sport, two uber veterans of the UFC. Minus 125 on the Moicano side, plus 120 on the Drew Dober side. This fight is like really interesting because I think that Moicano can be cracked, but I also think that Drew Dober can, I think Moicano could be cracked early and knocked out, and I think that Dober can be taken down and submitted in that first round. That wouldn't surprise me at all in the slightest with this matchup. Um, like I say, both guys been around the UFC for a very, very long time. Both solid, scrappy guys. Drew Dober, so many knockouts in the UFC. Um, really just a fire hydrant of a guy. You have to really hurt him to get him out of there. Got knocked out against Matt Frivola, came back against Ricky Glenn and starched him very, very quickly with that left hook. Really put him down and then followed up to the ground, put him down there. Where Moicano, like he will step in and a couple of days' notice, you saw that against Dos Anjos. Ultimately lost that fight, then came back. It's kind of crazy to think it's like 15 months since he last fought, but he got in there, beat Brad Riddell via submission. That's where I think he's got a massive advantage here. Get this fight to the ground. I think he can lock up torse chokes. I think he can get to the back. But I do think that his chin is vulnerable. And someone like a Drew Dober, if he was to get really into a rhythm of getting his strikes off here, I think he could turn out the lights of Moicano. And but there's something telling me in this fight here that Moicano is going to get the back and get a rear naked choke. But my gut feeling going into this fight was actually Drew Dober. So I think I'm going to go on the side of Drew Dober to win this fight. But if I'm Moicano, I'm trying to use takedowns here, jump on a neck, get a limb, because I think he could do some big, big damage. You've seen that like the Dry Herbert fight. Get takedowns, use that stifling jiu-jitsu game, use that ground and pound to really hurt him. But like I say, not that I'm going to rule out maybe Moicano hurting Drew Dober. Maybe Drew Dober now that the chin got cracked, he got put down, it might start to show itself a little bit more. Is Moicano the type of guy to really come out there and maybe sling some leather? I don't know. I think he's a little bit smarter than that. I think he has to go for takedowns. Gut feeling is telling me Drew Dober in this fight. I think he's going to find the chin at some point. So I'm going to pick Drew Dober. I'm going to go a second round knockout here after initially maybe losing that first round. And like I say, not a bad dog at plus 120. I think that line will come down a little bit as well. But for me, I'm going to pick Drew Dober to win that fight there. And the main event of the night, we have Roman Dolidze 12-2 record against Nasruddin Imavov 12-4 with the betting lines for this one. Plus 150 on the Imavov side, minus 150, sorry, on the Imavov side, with plus 130 on Roman Dolidze. This was another one. When I heard about this matchup, I just kind of got feelings when you think about fights and so on. I was kind of on the Imavov side, but as I was watching some fights back, I've actually switched over to the Roman Dolidze side here. I'm going to go with the dog in the main event. Really, I actually think it's a really well-matched fight, actually. I think that both guys very, very tough. I think that Dolidze is a guy that, and before his UFC tenure, I was a little bit impressed with, but I thought he would get found out. I kind of thought the same thing with Ricky Duplessis. I thought, obviously, a solid fighter with some great wins, win some titles, but I thought he would get found out in his UFC tenure, and it's not showed. And I've decided to still bet against him, so that's on me. But Roman Dolidze was a guy that I thought he would have won some fights, but ultimately I thought he would have lost, kind of been like a 50-50 fighter. And he's got like a 6-2 record with his losses to Trevin Giles, which was a very, very close decision, and he lost to Marvin Vettori, which was a very close decision, which I was on the Vettori side. I thought Vettori just did enough, but if it was to go on Dolidze, that wouldn't have really surprised me. It being a UD was a little bit surprising to me because I thought it was a lot closer than that. But Dolidze is not overly a guy that is going to come out here and get takedowns. He did show it in the Staropoli fight. He did show it in the John Allan fight, but they are against lower caliber guys, which I think he could have got at. And I don't think he's going to have that much success in the kind of grappling aspect here against Nasruddin Imavov. I see this, and when you look at the Imavov, like he came out last time and he started landing some takedowns. He showed that in the Buckley fight. That was one of the things I remember watching that live in Paris, was just some of his slick takedowns that he got there, got some top time, and has a fairly solid takedown defense himself outside of the Phil Hawes fight. and maybe Strickland got him down as well, if I remember. But I thought he was well on his way to winning that fight with Chris Curtis before the no contest. I think I had a bet him in that fight as well. I was hoping they were going to rematch that fight, because I would have probably laid the wood on Nasruddin Imavov in that spot. But for me, I think Dolidze can go hard. It's interesting, it's over 5 rounds here, so I'm a little bit interested to see if Dolidze like fades out. But he seems to me like one of those people that can fight through and keep on going. Both big guys, 6'2", 6'3", both a similar range of reach. I think Imavov could maybe hurt him with some kicks, slow him down there. But and he has the kind of higher output to maybe win some of these closer rounds. But for me, I just got feeling, not got feeling, just watching the fight, I feel that Dolidze is going to win a couple of these close rounds and maybe win a very, very kind of close decision. Not super confident, but for me, when I looked at it, I was like, I think it's dog or pass for me. I don't think I'll have any money in this fight. So for me, I'm going to pick Roman Dolidze to win that fight there. I think a split. I think a split could be in order there. So yeah. Guys, I appreciate it. I see I've got like 15 odd people in, which is pretty awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate you for sticking around. It's pretty late over here in the UK. Wherever you may be, it might be a bit of a different time. But yeah, guys, I'll throw this banner up. Just that's the wrong one. In fact, I deleted the banner, so I'm not going to put that up. It's a different one altogether. My dog of the week, I think I'm going to take Quinones as my dog of the week. And I think my favourite plays, I think Urbina is going to be one. And I think Natalia Silva's a good parlay piece, but I don't really want to bet that. Muradov actually thinks a decent dog play as well. And Drew Dober might not be a bad dog play either. So that's my plays there, guys. I appreciate you sticking around with me here. On your way out, if you can hit that like button, it'd be much appreciated. Until the next one, which I think is Jack Hermanson against Joe Pyfer. Until then, guys, all the very, very best. Take care. Peace.